Oh, Shabbat Shalom and welcome to the World Alliance of Qara'im weekly Torah study. I am Yaakov ben Yisrael, and I'm joined today with Hakhams and Melech, Hakhams Melech ben Yaakov. He will be here, I think, sometime today. Today we are reading Parashath Wa'Era. That's going to be in Exodus chapter 6, starting at verse 2. And if we're lucky, we'll make it to the end, which will be chapter 9, verse 35. I doubt we'll get that far, though. And as always, I'll wait until about 5 minutes after we've started the live stream for people to show up before I begin to read. And so I'll ask, is my sound okay?
So I can hear you very good.
Very good. Okay.
Very,
wonderful.
very good.
I've got my Bluetooth in today, so hopefully there's no trouble with that.
Okay.
So how has your week been?
Very turbulent.
Turbulent? Oh, no.
And what about your week?
My week is okay. It's my last week of vacation. I have to go back to work starting Monday.
Okay.
It's going to be a little strange after being away from work for a month.
Yeah.
But it's been okay. My week's been good. I've, had some trouble with the various online servers, but it's all worked out, so everything seems to be okay.
Okay.
So let me get to the place I need. Chapter 6, verse 2. So hopefully today I won't sound like I'm speaking in a bottle or underwater. Shabbat Shalom, Nicola.
Shabbat
Thank
Shalom,
you for
Nicola.
joining us today. And as I read today, I won't be looking at the messages, and there's actually a time delay from, if you're posting in Facebook or if you're posting at the YouTube site, there's a little bit of a delay before they actually show up, and I don't get any notification that that someone has written anything. So as I'm reading, I won't hear it, but once I look up, I try to stay on top of the questions. So if you have a question and you type it in, that's great. And if I'm a little slow getting to it, I will get to it eventually. So Shabbat Shalom, Rich, and also to Ezekiel. So we're coming up on the 5-minute mark. Man, time goes by fast. So just in case you might not be able to see it on the screen, I've got it posted where we're at. We will be in Parashath Wa'Era, and that is in Exodus chapter 6, starting at verse 2. And hopefully we will be able to read to chapter 9, verse 35, which will be the end of it. Okay, so I'll go ahead and begin the parasha. So starting at verse 2. وَيَدَبِّرْ Elohim el Moshe وَيَوْمَرْ Elau Ani Adonai, which I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And so Elohim spoke to Moses, and he said to him, I am Adonai. Wa'Era il Abraham, il Yitzhak, wa il Yaakov, ve'el Shaddai. Ushmi Adonai, lo noda'ati lahem. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai. And as for my name, Adonai, which is actually in the text is written Yod He Waw He, I did not make myself known to them, or I was not known to them. Now, there's always a question about, okay, what does this mean? Does this mean that the patriarchs didn't know the name Yod He Waw He? And I always say no, they didn't, and this is explained here. Because if he was not known, no, the grammar doesn't allow for that. I'll explain how that works. The question is, does Hebrew grammar allow at all a translation, I have not been known, to be a rhetorical question? And no, it doesn't. As I've explained in many other places, when it comes to certain things, like the name of the town Ramses, for instance, that wasn't even the name of the place until after the events of the Exodus. You have places like Hebron, which was not known as Hebron in the days of Abraham, but it's written Hebron. You have Bethel, which is called Bethel. And you see that when Abraham came to Canaan, it talked about Bethel being there, but we see later on that actually Yaakov named it Bethel. And it was actually known as Luz. Sorry about that. Someone, I hear notifications. People write me in all these different applications. But anyway, just like those place names were not known in the times of the patriarchs, but when you read the Torah, they use those. You have to understand that the time that Moses is speaking, or Moses is writing this is after the events of the Exodus. He's already been given the name Yod He Waw He, or Adonai. And so as he's writing the backstory, he's using those place names that he knows and that the people of Israel wouldn't know in his day. And that's all that is. So when we see that the Yod He Waw He is used, that's not actually what they said. They probably said El Shaddai, Eloah, or Elohim, or something like that. But the name Yod He Waw He was not used for the name of God until the time of the Exodus. And we know that because the name Yod He, it's actually a verb, but the name Yod He Waw He is not written anywhere. We have almost 1,000 years of written documentation from ancient Samaria all the way up until the time of the Exodus, and that name is not found anywhere, any written record, for the name of God, of any God. And we actually have lots of names of different deities in Akkadian and Sumerian, but the name Yod He Waw He is never found. That's specific to the Israelite people. Okay. Verse 4. וגם החימותי את בריתי איתם לתת להם את ארץ כנען Eighth Eretz Megorehem Asher Garuba. And I will also establish my covenant with them to give to them the land of Canaan, the land upon which they reside, of their residence, or if you want to say they're sojourning. Sojourn is actually means to reside, same thing. Upon which they reside. Esha Garu. Verse 5. Oh, he's Melech. Shalom, Melech. I
Hello.
think we lost Hakan.
What's that?
We lost Hakan.
Oh, we lost
But that's
Hakan?
okay. He'll come back.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
he'll come back.
I hope we find him.
All right, so we've already started. We are now in verse 4. I'm about to translate that. Oh, actually, I already translated that.
Okay.
So we're beginning verse 5, chapter 6, verse 5.
All right, 1 second. Let me open it up. Chapter 6, verse 5.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Let's see what we got here. Chapter 6, verse 5.
Mm-hmm.
V'gam ani shamati. Okay.
Yep. So, verse 5. وَغَمْ أَنِي شَمَعْتِ את נאקת בני ישראל אשר מצרים מעבידים אותם ואזכור את בריתי.
Mm-hmm.
And also I have heard the groanings of the children of Israel, that the Egyptians made them serve or caused them to be slaves. And I remembered my covenant.
Mm-hmm. So just as an overall, so we have the Exodus here.
Mm-hmm.
The Israelites have been in Egypt for 400 or 430 years, and their time there is coming to an end with great signs and wonders and destruction. And I can't help but make the analogy to the current day situation we have in the United States, where the Jews have been there for 200, 250 years. And their state there is now coming to an end, and it's happening also with great destruction and signs and well, we don't see the signs and wonders yet. Maybe we will, but their stay there is coming to an end with great destruction. Something that I predicted decades ago, and people laughed at me.
You know, one thing
now they're not laughing so hard anymore. They're still laughing, but less hard. Soon they'll be crying.
Yeah, one thing I like to point out to people that I've spoken to about, the later Exodus, because we have two Exodus in the Torah. We have the Exodus from Egypt, and then of course the prophets talk about in the later days that there'll be another Exodus from the current exile,
right?
And that it would seem to be even bigger than the event of the Exodus. And one thing I like to point out is that according to the prophets, God is supposed to say to those lands, give up my people. Say to the north, give up my people, and to the south, let my people go, and stuff like that.
Right.
And so you have to think that these different places where it's so comfortable for the Israelites to live, they've made a life for themselves, and they make a lot of money probably, and it's really comfortable to live there. And when you look at modern Israel today, while a person could probably have a comfortable living there, it might not be as appealing or comfortable as they have it in these other places. So what reason would they have to come back? You have to have these different events that makes it uncomfortable, so that they would get up and leave. Otherwise, they'd stay there.
Yeah, I think it was Rabbi Kahana used to say that there's not a single Jewish community that left its land of the exile voluntarily. They were all thrown out. So, I mean, yeah, I understand it. Why move from your comfort zone? Nobody wants change. Change is usually foisted upon people. So but it now seems that it's time for change. And if the American Jews don't wake up and start seeing it, then it's going to be foisted upon them more and more. It's interesting that the brilliance of the way that Yehovah works, that everything is built into the equation, that it's the very actions that Jews are taking that to try to secure their place in the United States or their safety in the United States, that is causing actually the danger, and is actually going to cause them either to be expelled or killed there. And that is all these liberal policies. See, all of the liberal policies are basically which are heavily promoted by Jews in the United States, are basically designed to make sure that everybody gets along. There's no discrimination. There's none of that stuff. But what they've done by doing that is ended up basically empowering a minority that hates them, namely the blacks, despises the Jews for the most part. Okay, and on the one hand, and on the other hand, has dispossessed the white majority, which doesn't despise the Jews for the most part. Some of them do, but those were the ones who gave the Jews the haven in the United States in the first place, and now has basically dispossessed them and of their country, and so it's pissing them off to the degree that there's going to be such a backlash that it's going to end one way or another. It's going to end with the Jews getting either killed or expelled from the United States of America. So our very actions to set us up a nice, comfortable place in the United States is the very things that rip the country asunder to the point that it causes Jews to be expelled from that place, or will have caused the Jews to be expelled from that place. And the analogy I always like to give is Jonah, right? For years I've been using this analogy of Jonah, which is that so Jonah was on the ship, right? And because Jonah had avoided his obligation to go to Nineveh, so he's out on the ship, and so Yehovah brings a storm on the ship, right? So they all draw the lots, and they find out that it's Jonah, and Jonah understands that Yehovah is doing this because he's disobeyed him, and so what do? He tells the sailors to take Jonah and toss him overboard, and the sailors they take Jonah and toss him overboard, and the storm settles down. It's exactly the same thing with the United States. The United States is the ship, right? And the Jews are like Jonah. They're there, and their very presence is causing the storm, because instead of going to Israel the way they should have, they went to this bizarre way station called the United States, and it is a bizarre place, and it always has been a bizarre place, but now it's really bizarre, and it's caused a storm because Yehovah said, "Oh, you were supposed to not go to New York. You were in Los Angeles. You were supposed to go to Jerusalem, but you ended up in New York. So I'm going to cause a storm." And what's going to happen is that the sailors, the people there, are going to take you and toss you overboard in order to calm down the storm.
Yep, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank God I'm out of that freak show of a place.
What? I don't remember. I don't really like to go back. I have family there, and of course,
so thank God I'm out. I'm never going back, as far as I can help it.
Yeah, I don't want to go back.
Right.
I would rather them come here to visit me.
That's right, and it's very unfortunate. I don't know if I'll ever see my parents again, or whatever. But I'm not going back there. It's to me it would be like climbing back onto the ship.
Well, a
The
sinking ship at
the
that.
ship of
When it's
Yonah
on fire,
out in
yeah,
sea.
yeah,
But
that ship is on fire and
yeah.
sinking.
But it's been a good run there at the United States. The first Jews came, I guess, with the original settlers, like back in the 1600s, something like that. So figure 300 years or something like that, maybe more, 350, 400 years. But the state of the, let's say 300 years. Yeah, it's almost as much as much fun as they had in Egypt, or as much time as they had in Egypt. I remember when this Barack Obama rose to power. I quoted that verse. I actually wrote an article. And I quoted the verse that a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. It's exactly what it was like, because he was really the first person, to be from a different race and a different mentality completely. And all of the previous presidents had some, because of their Christian background. Obama's nominally Christian, but because of their European Christian background, had some kind of affinity towards the Jews. And then this new king rose over, over the United States from a completely different dynasty, completely different race, in 2008. And I knew it back then. That was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, and interestingly,
Jews.
Overwhelmingly supported by the Jewish community in America.
What's that?
Obama, he was overwhelmingly supported by the Jewish community in America. They helped get him into that.
Because the Jews are a bunch of fools. Because they're fools.
And
because they believed.
He really did a lot against the state of Israel, and also against the Jewish community in America. He made it really tough on them.
Of course, but he always pretended he was their friends and he was doing everything for their best interest. Making peace, so-called peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. All for your, he's always acting in their best interest. But the Jews are so stupid, that they voted this enemy in, and they supported this enemy of the Jews for years and years and years, even though he despised them in his heart. As I hate to say, but most of the black people I've met despise the Jews, which cannot be said about the white people.
Well, it depends on the white person.
No, that's true.
That's true. We have another question from Nicola. Asks, "Is Europe better?" Absolutely.
Yes. There's no comparison. There's no comparison. Europe is 50. I always say Europe is 50 years behind the United States. If it doesn't learn the lessons from the impending collapse of the United States and follows down the same path, then Europe will end up like the United States in 50 years. But right now, it's infinitely better and infinitely more normal than the United States.
I am sitting in the former origin and capital of the Nazi Party, and I can tell you right now, I'm freer here than I ever was back in the States. And
the United States is descending basically into a military camp. Yeah. It's basically descending into one giant concentration camp at this point.
That's a fact.
That's a fact. But don't kid yourself. You're not. As an Israelite, maybe as a character.
I'm not safe here either.
Identified as a normal Jew, you would not be safe there either. The only safe place for Jews is the state of Israel. That's what we've always known. That's the only place for us. And here go the Israelites out to it right now, back in chapter 5 or chapter 6.
So, verse 6. לכן, אמור לבני ישראל, אני אדוני, והוצאתי אתכם מתחת סבלות מצרים, והצלתי אתכם מעבודתם, וגאלתי אתכם בזרוע נטויה ובשבטים גדולים. And so I say to the children of Israel, I am Adonai, and I will bring you out from under the burden of Egypt, and I will rescue you from their service, or from their slavery, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. So the what's called the Makos Mitzrayim, which is talking about normally the plagues of Egypt, Uh, there are also not only plagues, there are also judgments. So there are signs, there are wonders, and there are judgments all at the same time.
Where are we? Chapter. I'm sorry.
I just read chapter 6, verse 6.
Verse 6.
Yep.
Okay.
And now we're in verse 7.
B'zroa netuyah, right? And b'shvatim gedolim. And Yoas says that this is one of the reasons that he wants to extend the plagues, because he wants it to be b'zroa netuyah and b'shvatim gedolim. He wants it to be with these great, this outstretched arm and these great judgments. He wants to make a huge show out of Egypt. He wants to make a huge example out of Egypt for the Israelites to see, but secondly to show his strength to the rest of the world. Right? So there are. I'm trying to remember where it says this, but the goyim will hear and be afraid and things along those lines. So this is supposed to be a, for God knows how long, God has remained silent. He's remained silent even to his own people before he decided to come back and lifkodotam, to remember them or to repay them for good, repay the terms of the covenant that he had with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And now, it's his time to just, now he's silent no longer. Now he's going to roar like a lion and make an example of Egypt for the entire world, and take these idol worshippers and hang them by their whats for the whole world to see.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take verse 7.
Okay.
And then I shall take you to me as a people, and I shall be to you as a God. And you will know that I am Yehovah, your God, who takes you out from under the suffering, the burdens of Egypt. So I don't know if I have that much to say about that verse, but this is the time where God has made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but he hasn't made a covenant yet with the entire nation. And he's made prophecies that the entire nation, that all of the descendants of Jacob will be, his people, but he hasn't actually made it happen. So now this is the process by which he's actually going to take these people and turn them into his special people. Hello. Okay.
Yep.
Verse 8. I'll take also, I guess. Heveti etchem el haaretz asher natsati et yadi lashet ota Avraham. And I will bring you to the land which I raised my hand to give it to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So here we have again anthropomorphism, right? God raised his hand, and of course all the idiot Christians or whatever are going to say, that's proof that God is, has a bodily form. He raised his hand. He has a hand, right? So of course, goes without saying how ridiculous that is. L'Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, v'natati ota lechem morasha ani Yehovah, and I will give it to you as an inheritance. I am Yehovah. So when you speak to the goyim, as I often do, and they say to you, what do you mean is yours? You haven't been there for 3,000 years, and what are you coming and claiming? You're just a bunch of colonists. You're just a bunch of invaders. There it is right there. It's that I always say, and I think this is not my own thought, but again, Rav Kahan, I think always say this, or other people along those lines to say it. There's the contract. We've got the contract in writing that land is ours forever. And if we get thrown off the land temporarily, that doesn't mean it's not ours. It's supposed to be desolate when they're not there.
Interestingly, one of the in the modern times, you have this this conflict between the Islamic community and the nation of Israel. And they make the same claim that, especially amongst the Palestinians, which not all Palestinians are Muslims, they're also Christians.
Right.
But they make this claim that the Israelites were never really the inheritors of the land and so forth, But what I like to point out is even the Quran. We have this word here, morasha, which comes from
Right.
Yerasha. Okay. Now,
Right.
in Hebrew, the root has a yod as the first letter. But the same word in Arabic actually begins with a waw. So it's, and actually the sheen becomes a fa in Arabic, just because of the sibilance. And so instead of saying Yarasha, it's Waritha. Okay. And so the Quran calls the Israelites al-Warithun, the inheritors. So it uses the same term, that they are the inheritors, and that it was prescribed by God only to the Israelites. It was prescribed to no other nation in the world. That piece of land.
Yeah, there are a bunch of places in the Quran. I remember assembling a list once of places in the Quran where basically the Quran says that the land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel. There may be like 3 or 4 or 5 places where the Quran says it explicitly. Hello. And by the way, there is a subset. There is a small Zionist Muslim movement out there, believe it or not, in the world. Obviously, not too popular, but there is a small group of Muslim Zionists out there, believe it or not.
Yeah,
but,
I have a comment from Ezekiel. He says, I'd say that the black hatred of Jews is relatively new in American history. There's many black people here in America, also in Africa, who identify deeply with Judaism and Hebraism. We see that a lot with the Beta Israel, and also even the Rastafarian movement that I think is that Jamaica or the Bahamas?
No,
I think
it started
it
in
might be
Jamaica,
both.
but no, it started in Jamaica.
But they trace their ideas back to Haile Selassie, who was supposedly the one of the last kings of the dynasty of Solomon through Menelik. He says the majority of anti-Jewish sentiment I've ever seen throughout my life came from white men of European descent who identify as Aryan, and that was definitely the case in Europe. Also,
that
in
hasn't
America
been my
for
experience. That hasn't been my experience in America. Remember, I grew up in America, in a big city where I was interacting with all kinds of different people. And yes, there was plenty of subtle white anti-Semitism, but I realized that at a very early age, the blacks they despise the Jews, and the fact that there are some that see Haile Selassie as the descendant of Solomon is completely irrelevant, because they see themselves. It's like the Black Israelite movement. They see themselves as the real Jews, the real Israelites, and the Jews as the fake Israelites. So it's all replacement, theology BS. So I don't think so.
Well, I don't know about the Rastafarian movement, other than that it supposedly started with Haile Selassie. Whether it did or not, I don't really know. I don't know much about it.
Oh, it didn't start with
Beta
Haile Selassie.
Israel.
The
Beta
Rastafarian
Israel
movement was I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Beta Israel.
They thought Haile Selassie was the Messiah, basically.
Yeah, I don't really know. The Beta Israel, that's what's often called the Falashas. They call themselves Beta Israel, means the house of Israel, and I know several of them. I don't know any of them who actually say that they are the true Jew. They don't even like to call themselves Jews. They call themselves Israelites.
Right.
They didn't start using the idea of Jews until they actually had to move back, or they were able to move back to Israel. Then they took that idea of Jews, but they were from what I've read and what I understand, and they have similar ideas to Karaites. They didn't actually have this idea of Talmudic adoption of Talmudism, or not at all.
Not at all. They were indoctrinated when they wanted to. When they were basically they were in trouble in Ethiopia. They were an oppressed minority, right? The philosophies were. That was a derogatory term used by the
the Orthodox Ethiopian Christians who did that. And
whatever, I can't remember. Yeah. But so they called themselves Beta Yisrael, and it was only when Israel decided they were gonna take these people and bring them back to Israel that they were basically indoctrinated by the rabbinical movement and became rabbinical. They had nothing to do with rabbinical Judaism at all. They had their own form of worship, But Israel decided, I don't know why it decided, but I guess it decided that it needed an increase in population, and this would be a good idea. I think it was a horrible idea to bring them back to Israel. First of all, because I don't think they're ethnically, I don't think they're Jews at all. Maybe obviously converts, and I believe in the the ethnic basis of being an Israeli. There are certainly allowed to be Gerim, there's certainly allowed to be quote unquote converts, but I think that the amount that should live in the land of Israel and be part of the core of the nation should be very,
Well, how would you prove that they're not descendants of Israel?
What's that?
How would you prove that they're not descendants of Israel?
Well, as far as I know, you know more than I do, but as far as I know, genetics has shown that they're not.
No, I wouldn't say genetics has shown that they're not.
Okay.
The one of when we talk about and I'm gonna actually this video will get blocked. There is a question here about the isn't the black hatred of Jews connected with the curse of Ham? Ham was never cursed. There was no curse of Ham. Canaan was actually cursed, and it was his line that dwelt in the land of Canaan that actually lost their inheritance and was given to the Israelites. But there's no such thing as the curse of Ham. It's a curse of Canaan. But getting back to this idea of color doesn't mean anything. We all descended from one man, and yet we have various different colors. There weren't aliens from outer space that came around and seeded the planet with different colors. The different colors of humanity is a result of either gaining or losing genetic information. And I like to use this example because, for instance, we take a wolf, which has basically been shown to be the forefather, or not necessarily the wolf, but they're the closest to the ancestral beginnings of all canines throughout the world. You could take, for instance, that wolf, and you can breed out certain characteristics over time until you end up with a Chihuahua. All right, and that Chihuahua won't have certain genetic information anymore. However, you cannot take a Chihuahua and start a breeding process to where you end up with a wolf. And the reason why is all that genetic information that made the wolf what it is was bred out, so that they no longer have that genetic information. And it's the same thing with color and facial characteristics. This is our autosomal DNA that we inherit from both parents. And so when we talk about ethnicity, what you're actually talking with this DNA, these DNA companies like to talk about ethnicity percentages. What they're talking about is the phenotypes. And that's your eye color, your hair color, your skin color, and all that. And that happens when people move away from one another. And then you have these bottlenecks. And then over time, people marry and produce children, and parts of your genetic code is lost because you only inherit half of this information from each parent. And just the way it works is you breed out, I hate to use that word, but that's basically what you're doing. You're breeding out certain phenotypes. And this is where the colors, the eye eye color, the skin color, the different types of hair, and all these different features come from. We all descend from one person. And there's always been a question. Okay, well, what color was Adam? We don't know. It never says. We don't know what he looks like. It never describes it. It never even tells you what he even looks like. And so there's always been a question of what the first human being looked like. Was he black? Was he white? Was he look like an Asian? And what we know
but what's the point?
Like,
what's the point?
Well, I'm getting there. The point is, color has nothing to do with a paternal line. Okay? Just because a person is white or black, you can't say, well, he's obviously not Israelite. He's black. He's not Israelite. He's white. And that's what's being used today. That's preposterous. First of all, an Israelite is a paternal line, and that paternal line can have any shade of color there is over time as the Israelites moved out and intermarried within the host populations where they're at, which is why you have Israelites who look Persian, you have Israelites who look Chinese, you have Israelites who look African, you got Israelites who look European. And before I would ever say, well, he's definitely not this or that, I would say we have to find an actual genetic sample in Israel from someone that actually was an Israelite in that land, and find out what the paternal line is. Right now, we haven't done that. We can't do that because it's being blocked in Israel right now. And until that happens, I won't say, well, he's definitely not. It's like saying, well, how would you prove it? That's the idea.
Yeah, basically, but I wasn't. First of all, I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't talking about phenotype at all. Although I don't think you can completely discount phenotype. I was talking about paternal. I was talking about paternal genetics.
Yeah, well, the Parashath or the Beta Israel, they practice paternal descent, and now they have a long
yes, but as far as I understand, their paternal genotype is not in line with the Middle Eastern genotype.
That's nonsense. First of all, as I've said, this phenotype is your autosomal DNA, your paternal line. Most of these
I didn't say phenotype. I said genotype. Genotype on the Y chromosome.
Okay, on the Y chromosome. The majority of these guys who you're saying are actually converts have the same paternal line that you have. I want you to think about that.
Have the same paternal line that I have.
That's right. They have the exact same.
They may have the overall, but I don't think when it breaks down to the subgroups that they have the same.
Yep, I believe they do, and I can probably prove it.
All right, well, we'll talk about it.
And and that's what I'm getting at. When we talk about this today, people say, "Well, this is obviously the original Jew because they have this oral history that goes back to whenever." That they say, oh, well, he's a Jew because his father was a Jew, and his granddaddy was a Jew, and they've had this family history. And you have the same thing amongst the Beta Israel. They have the same tradition. We know that at the time after it was either right before, we know for a fact right before the Babylonian captivity, there was lots of Israelites who went to Egypt. After the captivity was over, that's where we have this elephantine Jewish community. And so we know that they were there. And we have evidence that they moved south into Ethiopia because the temple that they had at the time was destroyed. And that's the origin of this that I believe is the origin of the Beta Israel.
I don't think there's any evidence. What's the evidence for that? That's just speculation. In fact, there's a belief among the Beta Israel even that they converted at a certain point. That's part of their oral history. I don't think they all claim that they go back that they claim to be original Israelites. Also, I remember seeing a genetic study. I don't know. I'd have to look at it again. Where they look specifically at the genotype on the Y chromosome, the paternal genotype, and they compared various groups in Africa that
they were looking. What they're looking for at that time, because of the early Jewish tests that was found from Mike Hammer and I can't remember the guy's name, Skaroki or something. He was one of the first ones that did it. Who came up with this idea of the Y chromosome Aaron and the Cohen model haplotype, which has been proven hands down to be a crock of crap.
But I don't think I was talking about the Cohen haplotype.
No, you're talking about the study of the.
No, I'm not talking about that study. I'm talking about I don't remember what the study was.
Well, look, we can talk about that later. You send me all the material you got on the study that you're talking about, and we can talk about it later.
I'll have to look it up. At any rate, the other thing I wanted to say is I don't think phenotype is completely irrelevant either, for the simple reason that although I'm far from a genetic expert, when I look at people who identify as Jews from around the world, you can still tell that they retain some of the phenotypes that are in common with other Jews. Okay, take a classic example of myself. Okay, so I have a phenotype that may be identified as, I don't know, when people see me, they think I'm Southern European for the most part. They don't know what the hell I am, quite frankly. But my grandparents come from Belarus and Poland, places like that, and I certainly don't share the phenotypes of the typical Polish and Belarusian and Russian person. And if you look in Israel, I've interacted with Jews who come back from all over the world, and generally wherever they come from, they do not look like the typical phenotype of the people of that place. So I've had Indian Jews even. They don't look like Indians. They don't look like typical Indians. They will retain. Wait a second. They'll retain at least even though, as you say, autosomal DNA may be replaced over time. I don't think it's going to be fully replaced. There will be some. There will be some. There'll be some hints within the phenotype, within the physical appearance of the person, that they're a little bit different from the surrounding people. Okay.
All right. What's the phenotype of Alan Goldenthal that shows that he's Jewish?
I don't know. I haven't spent time with Alan Goldenthal. Maybe he has a big nose.
He don't look anything like you. He doesn't look. In fact, Damian Gordon, he doesn't look typically Jewish. What people call Jewish, this Jewish phenotype, and that's why I say that's
he does.
Nonsense.
He most certainly does. No, he does. I mean,
okay.
I could.
No matter what anybody says, you're gonna say whatever anyway. The point is,
all right, let's get back to it.
You can't find anything in the Nehemiah Gordon that identifies him typically as what people would.
I don't hang a picture of Nehemiah Gordon over my bed.
Hang on, I'll get him. Wait a minute. I'll get his little fat redheaded self here. Hang on, let me get a picture of it, and you can tell me what phenotype makes him Jewish, okay? And that's all I'm getting at. It doesn't really matter. Of course, there are, when you have communities like the Sephardic, the Mizrahi, and so forth, who have typically intermarried within themselves, those phenotypes will remain. But that's the thing.
Jews are going to intermarry with themselves. They're going to intermarry with themselves. Culturally speaking, there's going to be less not always, but there's going to be more intermarriage among Jews just because of a Jewish tradition than there would be, than into the general population. And so that's even more of a reason that they would retain some of the original phenotypes.
Do you have any?
Do I look like a Russian and a Pole? Even though God knows how many generations my family was in Russia and Poland, I don't look like a Russian or a Pole.
No, you look like an inbred Italian.
Some people think I'm Italian, but the point is that's what's showing up there is the Mediterranean phenotypes. Even though
Mediterranean, those are Mediterranean phenotypes. That's what I'm getting at. You have European phenotypes, you have Mediterranean phenotypes. You have all sorts of them. And you look at the Jews in Russia.
My point is, I don't think
it's really debatable whether they're actually Jewish or not. Anyway,
I don't think you can completely disregard autosomal DNA. Yes, it may be diluted from generation to generation, but I don't.
Autosomal DNA shows how closely related you are to whatever population you're intermarrying in, but it doesn't prove a paternal line. You can't use autosomal DNA and say, "Well, this is your paternal descent." It doesn't work.
No, of course not.
And that's because we share them.
Yeah. I'm not saying it does, but I think that it does show belonging to the nation of Israel, because the autosomal DNA will still retain, depending on the level of intermarriage. Some of it will be retained even after many generations from the original.
Yeah. Okay. So,
all right. Anyway,
there's another question about do you have Do you have any lineage to the Bukharan Jews?
Who, me? I hope not.
I guess you. I
I'm
don't know who's
joking.
asking.
I'm just joking. I have a lot of Bukharan friends. I don't think so. Not that I know of. All I know is that my ancestors trace themselves back at least as far back as I can trace, which is about 5 or 6 generations to Belarus and Poland. White Russia and Poland.
Yeah, but to me, like I said, I don't care about phenotype or color. What I care about is paternal lineage. And as of this moment,
I agree with you.
As of this moment, no one can say what is the original paternal line. Nobody can prove it because that is being blocked actively by I don't know who's over that stuff in Israel, but they block that. They don't want that to. They may know. They may know already, but they're not
going to. Just for the record, I agree with you. If it turned out that, let's say, the Ethiopians could prove their paternal descent from Jacob, I would accept them 1,000% as his brothers.
I'm with you there, and that's what I'm getting at. It's
right.
I don't know.
Right.
Like I said, I've got your lineage and I've got theirs, and I could put you on the same tree with them.
To a certain point, perhaps, but you could probably put a lot of different people on the same tree.
which they are actually closer to the Samaritan Kohanim than they are to you. But it's interesting. They all have the same eternal line. So now that that's over with.
Grab my computer.
Verse 9. ويدبر موسى كين ويدبر موسى كين إلى بني إسرائيل ولو شمعوا إلى موسى مقتصر الرؤى ومعبود قشا. And so Moses spoke thusly to the children of Israel, but they didn't listen to Moses because of the mikotzer ruach. That means their spirit was basically broken or cut, or however you want to put it. Shortened, the shortened ruach or spirit, and from the hard service.
Yep. So they were so busy trying to make ends meet that they couldn't deal with politics, basically. They were like,
Verse 10. ويدبر Adonai إلى موسى لمor. I think that's pretty easy. And so Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, who is writing me? Just a second. I've got my sister sending me pictures and other people sending me voice messages.
Okay.
Verse 11. Bo daber il Pharaoh Melech Misraim وشلح et Bnei Yisrael me'artso. Go speak to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, that he let the children of Israel go from his land. Verse 12. ويدبر موسى לפני Adonai לאמור, hein בני ישראל לא שמעו אלי ואיך ישמעני פרעה ואני ערל שפתיים. And so Moses spoke before Adonai, saying, look, the children of Israel haven't listened to me. Right. So why or how would Pharaoh listen to me, and I am uncircumcised of lips?
Right, or given the fact, or knowing that I am, or while I am, given that I am uncircumcised. Again, having you know, if it is that kind of conjunction, that can be almost anything. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have one more comment. It says, getting back to the DNA again, this exclusivity and denial of melanated peoples' connection to Israel is probably a better source of any black hatred for Jews because it is an awful lot like white supremacy. Could be.
Oh well.
Verse.
I just said of blacks. I don't care. You know, irrelevant of the phenotype. If they can prove that their genetics, their paternal genetics, link back to Israel, so yeah. But I don't think they can.
Verse 13. ويدبر أدوناي إلى موشي وإلى أهرون ويتسوم إلى بني إسرائيل وإلى פרעה מלך מצרים להוציא את בני ישראל מארץ מצרים. And so Adonai spoke to Aaron and to Moses, and he enjoined them to the children of Israel, or he commanded them toward the children of Israel, as well as to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, to bring out the children of Israel from the land of Egypt. So that was their job. They were tasked to do. Mm-hmm. And that is the end of the first Aliyah. So now we're starting the second Aliyah at verse 14. אלה ראשי בית אבותם, בני ראובן, בכור ישראל, חנוך ופלוי, חצרון וכרמי, אלה משפחות ראובן. These are the heads of the paternal house of their paternal houses. The children of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, Hanoch, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. These are the family. This is the family, or these are the family of Reuben. Verse 15. Ubnei Shimon, Yemuel, Yamin, Ohad, Yachin, Sohar, Shaul ben Hakinanis, Ele Mishpachot Shimon. And the children of Shimon is Yemuel and Yamin and Ohad and Yachin and Sohar and Shaul, the son of the Canaanite woman. These are the family of Shimon. Verse 16. Wa'ele Shemot b'nei Levi.
Yaakov, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
I said, let's just skip this part. It's boring.
All right, let's see.
Oh, really? I'll just skip a couple of verses because we're going to not be able to finish everything anyway, you know, unless you want to just read through them very quickly and get down to the part where it speaks about the lineage of, you know, of Moses and Aaron, which is the whole point of this in the end, right?
Well, yep. So, verse 20. Vayikach Amram et Yocheved dodatho lo laisha v'theled lo et Aharon v'et Moshe. Ushene chaye Amram sheva ushiroshim u'miat shana. And so Amram, who was the father of Moses and Aaron, he took Yocheved, who was his aunt, as a wife, and she gave birth to Aaron and to Moses. And the years of Amram's life was 137 years. Verse 21.
1 second here. Just 1 second. Making sure. Yocheved דודתו לו לאישה ותלל לו את אהרון ואת משה ושני חיי So, do you think that it's literally his aunt?
Yeah.
Do we have independent lineage?
It says at the very beginning that she was the daughter of Levi, so she was actually in the line of Levi. You could argue the point that maybe just the aunt just means some woman on the paternal line.
Right.
Just like some people say that Achot can mean any Israelite woman.
Right.
I guess you can argue that. Just like you can argue father versus grandfather or uncle. They're all considered of a house. So.
Yep.
So is Gershon essentially same as the name Gershon? I believe so. Where are we now? So, verse 23, وَيِقَحْ أَحَرَونَ et Elisheva bet Aminadav أخوت נחשון לו לאישה ותלד לו את נדב ואת אביו ואת אלעזר ואת איתמר. And so Aaron took Elizabeth, who was the daughter of Aminadab, who was the sister of Nachshon. Nachshon, that was the prince of the tribe of Judah. So he took one of the daughters of the tribe of Judah as a wife, and she gave birth to Nadav, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. And I'll skip over those again. And where are we at? So, verse 26. Hu Aharon uMoshe Asher Amar Adonai lehem Chotzi'u et bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim al Sevotham. And this is the Aaron and Moses, which Adonai said to them, bring out the children of Israel from the land of Egypt according to their host or their armies. Verse 27, Haim Hamedabberim il Pharaoh Melech Mitzrayim lihotzi et bnei Yisrael mitzrayim hu Moshe wa Aharon. They were the ones speaking to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, to bring out the children of Israel from Egypt. That is Moses and Aaron. That's the Moses and Aaron we're speaking about here. Verse 28.
That these lineages will sometimes come like right before there's an important event, right? So now Moses and Aaron, they're about to take center stage, right? Basically at this point. Here's the Exodus story, right? This is basically the introduction to the Exodus story. Now they're going to go to Pharaoh and start destroying his country and decimating it step by step with the help of Yoah. And it right before as an introduction to the story, we get this the begats. Yeah. So we know exactly who we're talking about. Who are these people exactly, right? We're reminded exactly, or we're told exactly who they are.
Yeah, and interestingly, not all the paternal lines were even mentioned here. You only had Reuben, Shimeon, and then Levi. That's it.
Well, I guess what's going on there is that they're trying to show where Levi, as if we didn't know already, but I guess Torah is trying to remind us where Levi falls in within the lineage of Jacob. He's the third born, right? So there's no need to go after that because we've established that Levi is the third born. Now we can drill down into the the lineage of Levi, I believe of Levi.
Verse 28. وَيَهِي بِيَوْمِ دِبَرْ Adonai لَمُوشَي بِأَرْضِ Mitzrayim, and it happened in the day that Adonai spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt. 29 is the beginning of the third Aliyah. وَيَدَبَّرْ Adonai إِلَى مُوشَي لَمُور أني أدوناي دبر إل פרעה ملك מצרים את כל אשר אני דובר אליך. And so Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, I'm Adonai, speak to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, all that I am speaking to you. And now this is one of the rare occasions where you actually find the verb deber used in the pa'al form and not the pl. Normally, that is in the pl form. But
in the pa'al form there? Say it again, please.
Yep. Any dover.
Dover. Mm-hmm. Sure. Mm-hmm.
That's a participle, and if it was PL, it would be medabber.
Right. What was I going to say? I was just going to say something. Yeah. So again, the verse starts off with Ani Yehovah, right? So again, we're that's kind of it kind of sets the stage, saying who's behind this whole thing, or God is saying I'm the one running this entire operation here, So let's so so it's all coming from God, I guess, is the point that is trying to be emphasized there. It's an obvious point, but it's just emphasizing here at the beginning again of the Exodus story, the actual story where the Exodus starts, or where the plague starts.
Verse 30. Wayomer Moshe lifnei Adonai. Now here he repeats the same thing he did earlier. Hein ani arad sevatayim wa'ech yishma elai Pharaoh. And so
he really doesn't want the job.
Nah, he don't want to. And so Moses says before Adonai, look, I am uncircumcised of lips. Right. How will Pharaoh listen to me?
Listen, man, you got the wrong guy here. All right, I am the wrong guy for the job. Really, I'm trying to tell you, but it's really, really the case. I'm the wrong guy. Please go reconsider one more time and go find someone else, because I just want to go back home and watch Netflix for a while.
Netflix.
Basically, what Moses is saying. You're really making a big mistake here. I'm just not up to it.
Yep, Reshit Lahatim.
What's that?
Reshit Lahatim. The Reshit is like when you say Netflix. I guess that's the internet. That's like a network. Lahat is the illusions of the Egyptians.
Okay, got it. Okay.
It's just an inside joke. I'll laugh at myself sometimes. It's okay.
Yes, too.
So verse 1 of chapter 7. Let me look. I just want to look and see if we have any more questions here. So, Wayomer Adonai Moshe, Re'eh, Nataticha Elohim leFarao, Wa'aharon Achicha Yihyeh Naviecha. And so Adonai says to Moses, now this is an answer to the question, how is Pharaoh going to listen to me?
Right.
And so Adonai says to Moses, look, I've set you, or I've appointed you as a god to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron, he shall be your prophet.
Right.
Ata tadabber et kul asher itzaweka wa Aharon ahicha yadabber il Paro wa shillach et bnei Yisrael me'arso. You will speak all that I commanded you, and Aaron, your brother, he will speak to Pharaoh, and he send and he will send the children of Israel from his land.
Right.
Verse 3.
I mean, this is, in a sense, you could say this is basically the beginning of the priesthood right here. Right, this is where Aaron basically and his descendants, in a sense, get elevated to a special status. Really, it was only supposed to be Moses, and you could even claim that it would have been the descendants of Moses who would have been the Kohanim.
Yeah, it's interesting that back when Moses first met with God the first time, he basically had the same discussion. Look, I'm heavy of speech. Don't send me. Who am I that I should go? Why should I go? Right. So he was given the two signs, and then he says, "Look, isn't your brother Aaron the Levite?" And he says, "He will come to meet you. He'll be glad to see you." And then he tells them, "You and Aaron and the elders of Israel should go and speak to Pharaoh." So it's interesting that the elders were also supposed to go and speak to Pharaoh, but you never see it where they go. You never see. I don't remember any place where the elders of Israel went with Moses and Aaron and spoke to Pharaoh. But it says they were supposed to go too, but they didn't. And we see that even here he says that Aaron is supposed to be speaking for Moses, but you never really see that except for I think one or two times where he tells Aaron to do whatever. But it's always Moses says to Pharaoh, and then he gives the staff to Aaron, says, and then he speaks to Aaron, stretch out your hand, and blah blah blah. So you never really see the part where Aaron is actually talking to Pharaoh that I remember. Even though it says that's what's supposed to happen. So we have another question. It says, "Appoint you God, not appoint you as God," right? Yeah, you can say it that way.
Yeah, but
I set you a God, but the idea is as a God. He didn't
as a God. The implication there is for sure as a God. So I think to get to the heart of the question there, I don't know who's asking it, but the person who's asking is saying, "Oh, does that mean that that Moses is a God?" No, it's an analogy. No. It's an analogy. Yeah. It's just that as a God is to a prophet, so Moses will be to Aaron. Okay, Moses is going to play the role of the boss, and Aaron is going to actually convey the words, right?
Yeah.
It's an
analogy. Another question from, I think this is Timon Matthew. Yeah. Didn't Moses marry a Cushite woman?
Yeah, he certainly did.
It says he married a woman who was a Cushite. Now, we know that we don't know if that's a separate woman from Sipporah or if that was Sipporah, because Sipporah was a Midianite and her father was the priest of Midian. So whether that was Sipporah or not, there's some debate about that. I don't.
Well, how could it possibly? I mean, yeah, how can it possibly be? Because Midian is different from Cush, right? Well, so she was clearly a Midianite. So.
Yeah, well, you have the idea of a person named Cush, just like we have a person named Kenaz. All right.
Right.
Caleb ben Yefune is called a Kenazite because of his father Kenaz.
So you're saying there's some unnamed Midianite somewhere named Cush, who's not a Cushite, who's actually a Midianite.
No, I'm just saying that there's debate about it. We don't see where Moses has but one father-in-law, supposedly, who has several names. Right. We're first introduced to him as Reuel, and then we're said his name is Yithro. Right. Then his name is Yether. Then later we have Hobab,
Right.
And so
this boy gets around.
Yeah, it could be that Moses had lots of wives. We don't, how can he have so many different father-in-laws, right? Or the father-in-law, it was just one father-in-law with several names. That's there's debate. It could be that she was a Cushite. I'm not saying that it wasn't. The text says she was Cushite, which means a Cushite woman.
Right.
But the debate centers around the fact that just like you have people called Kenizzite, you have people called Cushite. You have names amongst Israel later, Cush and Kish, which is a very popular name amongst the tribe of Benjamin.
Right.
And just like you have that medial wow, which changes indiscriminately between wow and yod, you have Methuselah and Metishalah, or Metushael and Metishael, I think it is. It's the same person, but the medial vowel is changed from a wow to a yod.
But Kush starts with a chaf, and Kish starts with a kuf.
The kuf, yeah.
So I don't know if that applies, but
no. Wait a minute. We'll answer that question. It's just like the name Yitzhak. Yitzhak is in the Torah written with a Saudi, but in certain places in the Tanakh, it's written with a sin. And the same way you can have two similar sounding letters change, kuf and kaf have similar sounds. But anyway, the point is we don't really know. Okay. If we go by the text says she married a Cushite woman. I just want to say that there's debate around it. You'll hear the different arguments, and that's how the arguments go.
Yeah.
Let's see. Verse 3. وأني أقشى את לב פרעה והרביתי את עופפי ואת מופתי בארץ מצרים. And look, and as for me, I will harden the heart of Pharaoh, and I will multiply, I will multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. Now, there's been lots of debate about this Hiphil form, where it says God will harden the heart of Pharaoh, and I'm going to show you a way that how this happens. It's just my opinion. It makes perfect sense to me. Of course, my meager understanding of anything doesn't make sense to most people, so I'll give you a word of caution when we get there. But we'll see. We saw that when, or we will see, that when Moses goes to Pharaoh and begins with the signs, the first one is of the snake. The first sign that Moses gave was the sign of his the staff becoming a serpent. And of course, it says Pharaoh called for the Hachamim and Hardening of Egypt, and they did the same thing. Now it says with their illusions. This is the word lahat, which means basically an illusion. They did it with their tricks or magic or whatever you want to call it. Me personally, I don't believe there's any such thing as people having a power to do magic.
I agree with that.
By demons. You have lots of demonology that is really foreign to the Tanakh, and you have lots of nonsensical books written later on by both Jews, Christians, and all other people about demons. Oh, they did it by the power of Beelzebub or whatever.
And about angels, the rabbis come up with an entire angelology, whatever it's called, later on, which
you don't find it. Yeah, you don't find anywhere in the Tanakh. Right.
Right. It's there's only two angels mentioned by name in the entire Tanakh. That's Michael and Gabriel. Those are the only two mentioned anywhere, and they're all mentioned in the later books of the Tanakh. And Gabriel is mentioned in Zechariah, and I believe, and Michael is mentioned in Daniel. Yet the rabbis came up with all these extra angels, Raphael and Mishael and this El and that El. And it's crazy.
Yeah.
You know,
Azazel, they say, is an angel, a demon,
right?
which is
Right.
nonsense.
That's right. Right.
Azazel just
Right.
means the goat of burden, the goat of
Right.
transport. Azel means to carry and to leave,
Mm-hmm.
to take away, and that's actually an
Azal.
Aramaic root.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, when you see Wayalik or whatever in Hebrew, in the Aramaic, it's the Azal. He went anyway.
Anywho.
But the Az would be the goat, and that's what where you get the idea of a scapegoat. The goat that has the actual uh, sin transferred by the laying on of hands of the high priest is to be sent away li'az azel, which is what it says, which means
Oh.
as a scapegoat.
They don't really know what they don't really know what it means, but it's definitely not a demon. Nobody really knows what Azazel means, but
okay.
So that's just one. That's one opinion.
Anyway,
yeah.
Verse 4.
Yeah.
ولو يسمع عليهم فارعو ونثقت את ידי במצרים והוצאתי את צבאותי את עמי בני ישראל מארץ מצרים בשבטים גדולים. And Pharaoh will not listen to you, so I will set my hand against Egypt, and I will bring out my armies or my host, which are specifically my people, the children of Israel, from the land of Egypt, with great judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 5. وَيَدْعُوا مِصْرَعِيم كِي أَنِي أَدْنَاي بِنْتُمْثِي أَتْ يَدِي عَلَى مِصْرَعِيم وَهُتْسَيْثِي أَتْ بِنِي يِسْرَائِيل مِتُّخَامْ. And the Egyptian will know that I am Adonai, as I stretch out my hand against or above or over Egypt, and when I bring out the children of Israel from amongst them.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 6. وَيَعَصْ مُوشَى وَأَهَرَونَ كَأَشَّرْ سِوَّى أَدْنَاي أُثَامْ كَيْنْ عَصُوا. And so Moses and Aaron did as Adonai commanded them, so they did. Verse 7. وموشى بن شمونيم شنا وأهرون بن شلوش وشمونيم شنا بذبرام إلى Pharaoh. And so Moses was he was 80.
Yep.
And Aaron was 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. So that lets you know that Aaron was born 3 years earlier than Moses. So Miriam was much older than both of those guys. Miriam, we don't know how many children exactly that Amram might have had, but we know those three. And Miriam is the oldest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, when Pharaoh gave the order to kill the children, that were the children that were being born at that time, not necessarily the children that were already born, and which is why Aaron would have escaped and not Moses. Aaron was already 3 years old when Moses was born, and then after what was it, 3 months? I think it was. He was 3 months old when he was put in the box. So that was the end of the third aliyah. Now we're beginning the fourth with verse 8. So let me look. We have a comment. Well, we had several comments. Nicola says the point is that it equates Moses to Elohim, which is plural, and thus showing that Elohim does not imply plurality of person when it applies to God. And that's true. And plurality, even when it talks about to most people. Abraham is called the Adonai, which is plural. And whenever you have an Israelite slave who is free from his service at the end of his service, and he doesn't leave, but he has a wife and children that belongs technically to his master. His master is called Adonai. Is plural. Potiphar is called Adonai of Yosef, which is also plural, and so forth. So plurality doesn't ever absolutely mean plurality of person. It just means either formality or a position above, in as far as stature or respect or however you want to call it.
Yep. Yeah, as we've spoken about many times, the royal we.
Yeah, the royal we
is basically what it is.
Okay, so verse 8, V'yomer Adonai el Moshe ve'el Aharon lemor. And so God, Adonai speaks to Moses and Aaron, saying, verse 9, Ki yidabber alechem Para'o lemor, tenu lachem mofet va'amarta el Aharon, kach et mattecha v'hashlech lifnei Para'o, yehi litani. Okay, and so if or when Pharaoh shall speak to you, saying, present for yourselves a miracle, a mofet, a sign or a wonder. Then you shall say to Aaron, take your staff and cast it before Pharaoh. Let it become a tanin. Okay, now this is where it was tanin. Earlier, it was to become a nachash. So this is where, in some cases, the nachash and tanin are basically the same. What they are exactly, we don't know, but they are some type of serpent, evidently from this context. Verse 10, وَيَّابُ مُوشَى وَأَهَرَونَ إِلَى الْفَرْعَوْا وَيَعْصُوا خَيْنَ كَأَشَرَ سِوَى أَدْوَنَاي وَيَشْلِخْ أَهَرَونَ إِتْ مَتَّيْهُ لِفْنَي فَرْعَوْا وَلِفْنَي عَبْدَاهُ وَيَهِي لِتَنِينَ. And so Moses and Aaron, they went to Pharaoh, or they came to Pharaoh, and they did so, or just as Adonai commanded them. And so Aaron cast his rod or his staff before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became as a tanin. Verse 11. وَيَقْرَ فَرْعَوْا لِحَخَمِيم وَلِمَخَشِفِيم وَيَعْصُوا قَمْحِيم حَرْتُمَي مِصْرَيِّم بِلَحَتَيْهِمْ. And so Pharaoh called for the wise men and the Mechashafim, which means basically the wizards or whatever, witches, and they also did the Khartoumim. This is an Egyptian word. Khartoum means basically, in Egyptian, the Khartoum is a priest, but it could be the same thing as like Kasdim is used later on for the Babylonians. Same class of enchanter. And so the Khartoumim of Egypt did also the same thing with their illusions. Lahatehim. The hat has to do with an illusion. And so you have to ask yourself, how do they work this illusion? How do these guys come out and do the exact same thing that God did? And I like to say that's how God hardened his heart, because this was the first miracle that Moses gave, and he allowed the Egyptians to do the same thing. because they had no power outside of what power God allowed them to have. And this is what set the stage for the hardness of Pharaoh's heart. And it says, verse 12, وَيَشْلِخُ إِيش مَتَيْهُ وَيِهْيُ لِثَنِينٍ وَيِذْلَعْ مَتَيْ أَهَرُونَ مَتَوْثَمْ. And so each person threw down his staff, and these staffs became taninim, which are serpents. But the staff of Aaron swallowed up their staffs. And now we have it. وَيَهْزَقْ لَيْف Pharaoh. And so this is the hardening of Pharaoh's heart. Although Shema alayhim, and he wouldn't listen to them. Ka'asher diber Adonai, as Adonai spoke to him, because if his magicians can do the same thing, what makes God so special, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is important because the Egyptians were able to do this sign, the first sign. They'll be able to do the next three, I think, because the serpent changing to, or the staff changing into a serpent is not really counted amongst the plagues of Egypt, the 10 plagues. This is a separate sign. So the first three things that happens, the Egyptians were able to do themselves. And then God sets this this distinction, this peduth, which literally means a redemption between the Israelites and the Egyptians, and the Egyptians were no longer able to do the signs that Moses was able to do. And we'll read about that here in a minute. So, verse 14. وَيَوْمَرْ Adonai LeMoshe كَذَيْذ لِفَرْعَوْ مَيْئِن لِشَلَّخْ Ha'am. And so Adonai spoke to Moses. The heart of Pharaoh has become hardened or heavy. He is refusing to send out the people. Verse 15. Lech il Paro b'bocher hine yotzei hameima ונצבת לקראתו על שפת היאור והמטה אשר נהפך לנחש תיקח בידיך. And so this is Adonai speaking to Moses. Go to Pharaoh in the morning. And behold, he will be going out to the water. And you shall station yourself to meet him on the banks of the Yaor, the river, the canal, and the staff which changed to a serpent. Here we go, the Nachash, which is what I said earlier. Nachash and Tanin seem to be in this context the same thing. You shall take in your hand. Verse 16, وَأَمَرْتَ إِلَىٰ Adonai Elohei ha'ivrim shilachani ilechem lemor shalach et ammi وَيَعْبُدُونِي بَمِدْبَارِ وَهِنَّ لَوْ شَمَعْتَ عَدْ כה. And you shall say to him, Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you, saying, send out my people, or send your people, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, he will not listen. Oh no! And behold, you will not listen even now. So I guess this is what Moses is telling the Pharaoh. And look,
Yaakov, I'll take a couple verses maybe.
Okay.
Just to mix it up here. All right, good. So you were saying?
No, this is Moses still speaking to Pharaoh, and even though you refuse to listen even now, up until now. That's cool.
All right, so verse 17. So says Yehovah, through this or in this you shall know that I am Yehovah. Hine anochi makeh b'mateh asher biyadi al hamayim asher bi'or v'nefchu ladam. Behold, I shall hit with the staff that is in my hand upon the water, which is in the Nile, and or in the river, and v'nefchu ladam, and it shall turn to blood. Verse 18, V'daga asher bi'or tamut, and the fish that are in the river or in the Nile shall die. Ba'ash hayor v'nil'u Mitzrayim lishtot mayim min hayor, and Hadaga should be or tamut, and the fish that are in the Nile shall die. Uba'ash hayor, and the Nile shall stink. Basically, v'nilu Mitzrayim lishtot mayim min hayor, and Egypt shall be disgusted by drinking water from the Nile. Okay, so it's going to be a bloody, sticky mess of death. All right. Just trying to see if there are any interesting comments here. All right. Yomer Yehovah el Moshe, verse 19. Yomer Yehovah el Moshe, and so Yehovah said to Moshe, Emor el Aharon. Say to Aaron. So here we have an example where Aaron is actually doing it, right? Aaron, kach metcha v'nateyatcha al mimei Mitzrayim. Say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand upon the waters of Egypt. Al naharotam, upon the rivers. Al yeorehem, it's usually translated as streams. Upon their streams. Al adamehem, and upon their lakes or ponds. Al kol mikveh mimehem, and upon all the gatherings of water, literally, I guess you could call it as puddles or pools, and upon all the gatherings of their water, vayu dam, and yihu dam, and they shall turn to blood. V'haya dam b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, and there shall be blood in all of the land of Egypt. Ba'etzim u'ba'avanim, and upon the trees and upon the stones. So that's that. Just trying to see if there's anything I'd like to say here. Nope, I don't think so. So verse 20. V'yasu chen Moshe, and Moses did so. V'Aaron, and Moses and Aaron did so. Kasher tziva Yehovah, as Yehovah had commanded. V'yaram b'mateh, and they picked up or they lifted up the staff. V'yah et hamayim asher bi'or, and they struck the water which is in the Nile. V'inei Pharaoh, before Pharaoh's eyes, u'leinei avdav, and before the eyes of his servants. V'hu kol hamayim asher bi'or ledam, and all of the water which was in the Nile turned into blood. That's verse 20. Verse 21, V'daga asher bi'or meta, and the fish that were in the Nile died. V'ash hayor v'lo yichlu Mitzrayim l'shtot mayim min hayor, and the Nile stank, and Egypt could not drink water from the Nile. V'hi hadam b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, and the blood was in all of the land of Egypt. Verse 22, V'yasu chen Hartumei Mitzrayim v'latehem, and the Egyptian magicians did the same with their spells, with their magic. V'yahazak le Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's heart was strengthened. V'lo shama alehem kasher diber Yehovah, and he did not listen to them. He did not listen to what to them as Yehovah had spoken. In other words, he did not listen to what Yehovah had spoken to them.
And it's as a result of them doing the same thing that Moses did. Moses just turned the water to blood, and they did the same thing. Okay, we can do the same thing.
Sure, exactly.
And so this is how God is hardening the heart of Pharaoh with these miracles. He's allowing the Egyptian magicians to do the same thing. Because how can you say they would have power if God didn't give it to them? Right?
That's right.
That's what I look at.
Yep. Okay. And let's see where we were here.
23.
What is 23? V'fen Pharaoh v'yavo el beito, and Pharaoh turned away and went to his house. V'lo shat libo gam nesot, and his heart did not. How would you say?
He didn't set his heart also to this.
Yeah, his heart didn't go in the direction.
He didn't even consider this. Usually, the phrase when it says to set your heart against something, that usually has to do with having to consider it or think about it. And so the idea here that we're reading is he just saw Moses do this with this water. He called his magicians. They did the same thing, and he wasn't impressed. So he just turned around and went home, and he didn't even think about any of that.
Okay, so where were we? Verse 24. ויחדרו כל מצרים סביבות היאור מים לשתות כי לא יכלו לשתות מימי היאור. And so all of Egypt started digging around the Nile looking for water to drink, because they could not drink the water of the Nile. So here you have a bunch of these idiots digging holes everywhere. So God has really turned it into a comedy scene, right? Digging holes all over Egypt looking for water. Maybe a horror scene. Verse 25, Yemale shi'at yamim aharei hakot Yehovah et hayor. And 7 days passed, or 7 days were filled after Yehovah struck the Nile. And we're up to chapter 8. All right, Yaakov, you can go ahead.
So, verse 26. We got a couple more comments. Nicholas says Aaron is instructed to stretch the staff over the water, but he actually hits the water, similar to what Moses did with the rock.
That's a very good point, actually. Never even thought of that. I never thought of that one before. It's pretty good.
So verse 26. Also, that's a good point you brought up, because Moses was later told. Actually, it says both of them, Moses and Aaron, were told to speak to the rock, and Moses struck the rock. Now, interesting, we have several scenes in the Torah where it says Moses was on the mountain and he left Aaron behind him in charge. When him and Joshua come back, of course, there's a big party going on, and the way the language reads, it could be seen that not only were they partying, but they were having this sex orgy up in front of this calf. And so Aaron was the one who actually made the calf. They brought it all to him, and he put it in whatever he put it in, and he actually made the golden calf. Now, whether he said it or not, I don't think he actually said, behold, these are your gods who brought you out of Egypt. But he actually called for a hag. Okay. Now, when Moses comes back, he's a little peeved, and he asked Aaron about it. Aaron actually lied. He said, well, we just kind of threw this stuff in the fire, and out came this calf. That's what he says.
Yeah.
All right. So instead of being punished with the other people, he was the one in charge as Moses was on the mountain. I think there was a lot of people killed over this instance, and but Moses was promoted at this time to the Kohen Gadol. Actually, later to the Kohen Gadol. All right, so he wasn't punished for his own participation in that. Later, we see that Miriam and Aaron questioned the prophethood of Moses. Miriam struck with leprosy, and Aaron wasn't. But when you see the punishment that for what Moses did, now Moses struck the rock when him and Aaron were both told to speak to the rock. Now you have Aaron being implicated in the disobedience of Moses. Okay, Moses went and struck the rock. Why is Aaron now being punished with Moses? So you have several instances where Aaron, you would think rightly that he should have been punished right along with the other people, especially being in the position of authority that he was in, but he wasn't. So in the instances where he should have been, he wasn't punished. In the instance where he actually didn't strike the rock, now he was punished. He was to die in the wilderness right along with Moses for that disobedience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. Okay. Verse 26. Did I read 26 already? ويؤمر أدوناي لموشى بو إلى فرعون ومرت إله כה אמר Adonai שלח את עמי ויעבדוני. And so Adonai says to Moses, go to Pharaoh and you shall say to him, thus says Adonai, send my people that they may serve me. وإن מעין אתה לשלח, הנה אנוכי נוגף את כל גבולך בספרדעים. And if you refuse to send, behold, I am striking all of your borders with frogs. This is the beginning of the Sephardic movement. Nah, two different words.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 28. وشرات هيئور سفردعيم وعلو بباو ببيثيخ وبحدار مش كذيخ وعل بتثخ وببيت عبديخ وبعمخ وبتنوريخ وبمش مش أروثيخ. Now this is interesting. And the river shall swarm, or the canal, the Nile shall swarm. Sephardim, which is frogs, they shall come up and they shall rise up and they shall come to your house, into your house, and into your sleeping rooms or your bedrooms, and upon your beds, and in the house of your servants, and also of your people, and in your ovens and in your mixing bowls. And that seems strange for a frog to hop into the oven. But anyway. 29. Uvecha amnecha uvekol abadecha ya'alu hat sefadim. And against you, and against your people, and against all of your servants, these frogs shall rise up. Now this hey at the end of the becha, this is sometimes used. That's the second person. This ka here is actually the second person pronominal suffix you. And you see it sometimes where the hey is used instead of just the kaf. And so that's all it is. That doesn't have anything to do with crying. Chapter 8, verse 1. وَيَوْمِرْ أَدْنَاي إِلْ مُوشَى إِمُّر إِلْ أَهْرَوْ נוטה את ידך במטך על הנחורות, על היורים ועל האגמים, וחעל את הספרדים al Eretz Mitzrayim. And so Adonai says to Moses, speak to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff upon the rivers and upon the canals or the streams and upon the lakes or ponds, you can say. I think in modern Hebrew that's ponds or something. And that the frogs shall rise up upon the land of Egypt. Verse 2, وَيَيْتْ أَهَرُونَ أَتْ يَدَهُ عَلَى مَيْمَيْ مِصْرَيْم وَتَعَلْ حَسِّفَرْدَيَعْ وَتَخَذْ أَتْ أَرَتْ مِصْرَيْم. And so Aaron stretched out his hand upon the waters of Egypt, and the frog, this is singular, and the frog rose up and covered the land of Egypt. Verse 3. وَيَعْسُخَيْن حَرْتَمِينَ بِلَتَيْهِمْ. And this is actually spelled differently. There's a missing hay there. There should be lahat, but the hay is left out. بِلَتَيْهِمْ وَيَعْلُوا السَّفَرْدَيْنِ عَلَى أَرْضِ مِصْرَيْم. And so the magicians also did with their magic, or they did the same thing with their magic or with their illusions, and the frogs rose up upon the land of Egypt. Verse 4.
Yaakov, I'll be back in just a bit. I gotta go take care of something.
Okay.
All right.
Verse 4. So I'm gonna check my comment section. Okay. So verse 4. وَيَقْرَ فَرَعَوْا لِمُوسَى وَلِأَهْرَونَ وَيَوْمَ حَأْتِرُوا إِلَى أَدْنَاي وَيَسِّرْ حَسِّفَرْدَيْنِ مِنِّي وَمَعَمِّي وَأَشَلَّخَا إِذْهَعَامْ وَيِذْبَحُوا لَأَدْنَاي. And so Pharaoh called for Moses and for Aaron, and he says, intercede with Adonai that the frogs be taken away from us and from our people, or my people, and I will send the people that they may sacrifice to Adonai. Verse 5. ويومر موسى لفرعون هتبائر علي لمساي اعتير لك ولعبديך ولعمך لحخريث السفردين منك ومن بثيך رخ بيور تشعرنا. And so Moses says to Pharaoh, hit the pa'er. This comes, you have, in fact, the Roth Tafarians come from Roth Teferet. This word means to be glorious. And it's in the hit pa'er form, which means hit pa'er, which means make yourself boisterous or glorious against me. As to when I shall intercede for you and for your servants and your people, to cut off the frogs from you and from your houses. Only in the canal shall they remain. And so basically, Moses is demonstrating his authority over doing the signs by telling or asking Pharaoh to say when do you want me to do this? So give me a deadline. ويومر لمحار ويومر كدفاريخ كدفاريخ لمعن تدع كي أين كأدونai Eloheinu. And so he says, this is Pharaoh saying to him, tomorrow. And so he says, according to your word. This is Moses speaking to Pharaoh now, saying, as you have spoken. In order that, now this is the liman. This is, anytime you see this word liman, normally it's translated as because, or in order that, or for the sake of. And this is basically showing as a consequence of something, is so that I will do this, and then you will know because I have done this. So in order that you shall know that there is none like Adonai, our God. And that is the end of the fourth aliyah. And now we begin the fifth aliyah. In verse 7. وَسَرُوا هَسِّفَرْدَعِينَ مِمَّخَ وَمِبَاثَيْخَ وَمِعَبَدَيْخَ وَمِعَمَّيْخَ رَخْ بَيَأُرْ تِشَّأَرْنَا. And the frogs shall leave from you, and from your houses, and from your servants, and from your people. Only in the river, the canal, or in the Nile they shall remain. Verse 8. ويتسى موشي وأهرون معين بارو ويتزعق موشي إل أدوناي على دبار السفردين أشر سام لفرعون. And so Moses and Aaron went out from being with Pharaoh. And Moses cried out to Adonai concerning the thing of the frogs, which he set for Pharaoh. Verse 9. وَيَعَسْ أَدْنَاي كِدَبَارَ مُوشَيْ وَيَمُوتُ هَسِّفَرْدَعِينَ مِنْ حَبَّثِينَ مِنْ حَتْسِرَوث ومن حَسَّدَوث. And so Adonai did, or he worked it according to the word of Moses. And so the frogs died. They died from the houses and from the courtyards and from the fields. Verse 10. وَيِتْبِرُوا أَثَامْ حَمَرِيم وَتِذْعَشْ هَآرَتْ. And so they gathered them in piles. This is Hamarim, which is an emphatic form, which means great piles or many piles. And the land or the earth stank. Okay. Verse 11. وَيَارْ پَرَعُوا كِي حَيَثَا حَارِبَهَا وَحَخْبَيْر أَتْ لِبَوْ وَلَوْ شَمَعْ أَلَيْهِمْ كَأَشَرْ تِبِّرْ أَدْنَا. And so Pharaoh saw that there was a respite. This riwawa is talking about a distance of time. Here it means respite. Whenever you look in the, we read in Bereshit, in the narrative or in the story about Yaakov when he's returning to his brother Esau, of course he hears that his brother's coming with these 300 or so men, and he's upset, so he sets his family up and so forth, and he begins to send gifts to meet Esau, and he says he put a riwawa between them. He says, let there be a riwawa, which means a pause in a space. So here it's talking about a respite. It's a pause in these signs, right? And so, وَحَخْبَيْر et lebo. And so, again, he caused his heart to become hardened or heavy. Who is the cause of this? We don't know. Whether Pharaoh made his own heart that way, or whether it was God doing it. That's not exactly explained here. And so he wouldn't listen to them, as Adonai spoke. Verse 12. وَيَوْمَرْ Adonai il Moshe Imor il Aharon nete et maktecha وحك et عفار haaretz وحيا لكنين بكل أرض مصرين. And so Adonai spoke to Moses, or Adonai says to Moses, speak to or say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth, and that it become as kinim. Now, sometimes it's called lice, sometimes it's called gnats. What they actually are, we don't really know. I think nowadays they talk about the word kinim here is talking about gnats, so that there will be gnats in all the land of Egypt. And just to make a point here, everything is going on. These frogs, these gnats or these lice, this lice here, also the blood in the water, all that was happening simultaneously to the Israelites as well as to the Egyptians. There's no distinction yet mentioned here. So they actually had to go through this because it's talking about in all the lands of Egypt. Verse 14. وَيَعْسُخَيْنْ حَرْتُمِينَ بِلَتَيْهِمْ لِهُتِي et hakinim وَلَوْ يَخُلُوا وَتَهِي hakinam ba'adam u'b'bahima. And so the Hardening also did such with their enchantments, to bring out, or they sought to bring out these gnats or this lice, but they were not able. It says, "Walo yacholu," they were not able. And what the hakinam, and so the gnats were on man and on beast. So nobody was spared from these lice or these gnats or whatever it was that was pestering them. Verse 15. وَيَوْمَرُوا هَحَرْتُمِينَ إِلْ پَرْعُوا إِتْبَعْ إِلَهِمْهِ وَيَهْزَخْ لَيْ پَرْعُوا وَلَوْ شَمَعْ إِلَيْهِمْ كَأَسِرْ دِبِرْ Adonai. Now we have an interesting scene. Now, Pharaoh's heart was hardened from the very beginning, because when Moses brought the first sign, he threw down his staff, became a serpent. The Egyptians did the same thing. Made the blood, the Egyptians did the same thing. Right? And so now we have the issue of the, actually they did the same thing with the frogs too. I forget the frogs. So we had the serpent, the blood, the frogs, the first three signs they were able to do. Now they couldn't do this sign, so they weren't able to do it. And so now they said, this is the finger of God. Okay? And so Pharaoh's heart was again hardened, that he wouldn't listen to them as God spoke. Okay? So now, because his magicians weren't able to do it. So at the beginning, his heart was hardened because he was thinking, my magicians can do the same thing. What's the big deal? And he had utter contempt for Moses and Aaron. Now, it's a matter of pride. Now, wait a minute. You mean these Hebrew gods this Hebrew God can do what my gods and my magicians can't do? But now we have a different situation. verse 16. Verse 16. وَيَوْمَرْ Adonai Moshe השכם בבוקר והתייצב לפני פרעה הנה יוצא המימה ואמרת אלה כה אמר Adonai שלח עמי ויעבדוני. And so Adonai spoke to Moses, get up early in the morning. Hashkem means to rise early, not just to wake up, but to get up early in the morning. And station yourself before Pharaoh. Behold, he will be coming out to the water, and you shall say to him, thus says Adonai, send my people that they may serve me. Verse 17, he's continuing to speak. Ki im einecha meshaleach et amni, hineni mashliach bicha ubi'abadecha ubi'ammecha ubi'vatecha et ha'arov ומלאו בתי מצרים את הערוב וגם האדמה אשר הם עליה. For if you don't send my people, behold, I will be sending against you and against your servants and against your people and against your homes the arov. The arov is some sort of pest. Some people say it's a fly. I've read rabbinic commentary where it says it's a mixture because this is the word araf, which means to be a mixture. We actually see this word used when the Israelites come out of Egypt. It says, and a erev arav came out with them. And so, according to some rabbinic commentators, they say that this is a mixture of different pests. That it was like scorpions and spiders and flies and worms and all kind of stuff, and they pestered the Egyptians. And they shall fill up the houses of the Egyptians with these arov. Also the land which they are upon. So the land and their homes and everything in Egypt will be full of it. Now we have verse 18, which is the first time you see. Now the Israelites weren't spared from the first three, the blood, the frogs, and the lice. But now he's going to make a distinction. This is where the last one with the lice or the gnats, they weren't able to replicate that with their enchantments, and now they're not going to be able to replicate this as well. But not only that, he says in verse 18, "Wahifleithi bayom hahu et eretz Goshen asher ani omed aleha libilti hiyot sham arov lima'an teda ki ani Adonai beqerev haaretz." And I will set a separation. It literally means I will treat specially, or I will treat wondrously, is basically what he's saying. In that day, the land of Goshen, which means he will treat the land of Goshen differently than the other lands in Egypt. In Goshen, which is where my people are dwelling, so that there won't be there any arrows. So this is how we know this is talking about separation. So only the land of Goshen. Now, what's so important about the land of Goshen? The land of Goshen was where Joseph had the Israelites settle, and this is also the land where the priests, the Kohanim of Egypt, lived, and that was also one of the most blessed parts of Egypt. This is the land there was really rich and really well watered. In order that you may know that I am Adonai in the midst of the land. And that is the end of the 5th Aliyah. Now we begin the 6th Aliyah. Man, we might finish this today. Okay, verse 19. وصمتي فذوث بين عمي وبين عمك لمحار يحيي هؤلاء هذين. And I shall set a fidhuth. Fidhuth comes from padat, which means to redeem. Whenever, for instance, you read later on about the giving of the shekels for the firstborn is called the pidyat banim, which means the redemption of the sons. The firstborn would be redeemed with I think it's either a shekel or a half shekel. And so he says, I'm setting a redemption between my people and between your people. Tomorrow, this sign shall be. So this handling, this wondrous handling of Goshen, differently than the rest of Egypt, is also one of the signs. Okay, so this is what it's called. So this sign shall also be. Verse 20. وَيَعَثْ Adonai came. ويضاء عروض خبيث بيت فرعون وبيت عبدار وأدخل أرض مصرين تشحيتها أرض مبني عروض. And so Adonai did so, and the Arov, these great Arov, came into the house of Pharaoh and the house of his servants, and against all the land of Egypt. The land was destroyed because of this Arov. Verse 21. ويقرأ فرعون إلى موسى ولأهرون ويومر لخو ذبحوا للوحيكم بآرت. And so Pharaoh called to Moses and to Aaron, and he says, go sacrifice to your God in the land. So he didn't allow them to go away. He said, you can go and worship God, only do it here. Verse 21. No, verse 22. ויאמר משה לא נכון לעשות כן כי תועבת מצרים נזבח לאדוני אלוהינו הנה נזבח את תועבת מצרים לעיניהם ולא יסכלונו. And so Moses said, this is not correct to do so, because it is the Torah Mitzrayim, which means the abomination or the hateful thing of Egypt. We shall sacrifice to Adonai our God, and behold, we will sacrifice the Torah of Egypt, the abomination of Egypt, before their eyes. Okay, so we will be doing this act in the land, we were doing it in the eyes of the Egyptians. And so it says, Walo yiskalunu. And so that this is said as a question, will they not stone us? Verse 23. Derech sheloshet yamim melech b'midbar v'nizbachu la'adonai. No, وَزَبَحْنُ لَأَدْوَنَاءِ إِلَهِينُ كَأَشَرْ يُمَارْ أَلَيْنُ. 3 days journey we will go in the wilderness, and وَزَبَحْنُ, and we will sacrifice to Adonai our God as he has said to us. Verse 24. وَيُمِرْ پَرَعُو أنوخي شلح إثخم وذبحتم لأدونai إلهيكم بمدبار رخ هرحيك لو فرحيخو للخت حأتيرو بعدي. Okay, and so Pharaoh says, look, I'm sending you, or I'm sending with you. Okay, or I'm sending you, and you shall. Or Pharaoh says, I am sending you, and you shall sacrifice to Adonai your God in the wilderness. So he agreed. Okay, you can go to the wilderness. Only only you shall not go very far away. So now intercede on my behalf. 25. ויאמר משה, הנה אנוכי יוצא מעמך وحترثي إلى أدونai وصار הערוב מפרעה מעבדיו ומעמו מחר רק על יוסף פרעה חסל לבלתי שלח את העם לזבוח לאדוני. And so Moses says, behold, I am going out from you, and I shall intercede to Adonai, and the Arov shall leave from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people tomorrow. So tomorrow, this is when they'll leave. Only don't let Pharaoh trifle. Okay, talal, which means to basically mock. Okay, don't let Pharaoh continue to mock by not sending the people to sacrifice to Adonai. Verse 26, وَيَتْسَ مُوشَى مَيْعِمْ پَرْعَوْ وَيَعْتَارْ إِلْ Adonai. And so Moses went out from Pharaoh, from being with Pharaoh, and he interceded with Adonai. 27, وَيَعَسْ أَدُونَي كِدَبَار مُوشَى وَيَاسَرْ هَعَرَوْ مِپَرْعَوْ مَعَبْدَاوْ وَمَعَمَّوْ لَوْ نِشْأَرْ إِحَادْ. And so Adonai did according to what Moses spoke, and the Arov left from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. Not one remained. Verse 28, وَيَخْبֵד פרעה את ליבו גם בפעם הזאת ולא שלח את העם. So now we have a subject here. So now Pharaoh hardened his heart, which means Pharaoh hardened his own heart. Also this time that he wouldn't send away the people. Chapter 9. This is verse 1. ويومر أدوناي إلى موشى بو إلى פרעה وדיברת אליו כה אמר אדוני אלוהי העברים שלח את עמי ויעבדוני. And so Adonai spoke to Moses, go to Pharaoh and you shall speak to him. Thus says Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, send my people that they may serve me. Verse 2. Ki im ma'in ata l'shalleach wa'odecha mahazich bam. For if you continue, if you refuse to sin and you remain, or you continue mahazich bam, holding on to them. Okay. Verse 3, Hinne yad Adonai hoya b'michnecha asher b'sadeh b'susim b'hamorim b'gemalim b'bachar u'b'son dever kaved me'od. Behold, the hand of God hoya, This is interesting because this is the same root as Yote Walhe. This is the Hawa. This is now the participle Hoya. Behold, the hand of Adonai is against your property, which is in the field, or your livestock, which is in the field, against horses, against the asses, the hamor, and against the camels, the herds, and the flocks. A very great pestilence. All right, dever. This is interesting. This word dever. This is basically what Moses spoke to them at the very beginning. Let us go serve Adonai, because unless he bring against us a dever or a sword. Okay. And interesting, this word dever, while it's normally translated as a pestilence, it could be any type of plague, really. And so the word dever and davar has the same plural. So you have in the plural for dever, you have devarim, and for the word davar, you also have devarim. So you have the 10 words that God gave to Moses. You have the Aseret HaDevarim, the 10, what's normally called the 10 Commandments, given to the Israelites, and then you have the Aseret HaDevarim, or the 10 plagues given to Egypt, or the 10 pestilences. That's interesting. Verse 4. وَحِفْلَ أَدْنَاي بين مقني إسرائيل وبين مقني مصرين ولو يموت مكل لبني إسرائيل دvar. And so God made this hifla. This is what he said. He'd make it special, something special or something miraculous between the property or the livestock of the Israelites and between the livestock of the Egyptians, so that not anything that belonged to the Israelites died. Okay, so only the livestock of the Egyptians would die. Verse 5, وَيَاسَمْ أَدْنَاي مَوْعِيدَ لَمُور مَخَار يَعْسِ أَدْنَاي هَدَّبَار هَزَّي بَآرَتْ. And so Adonai set an appointment, saying, tomorrow Adonai will do this thing in the land. Verse 6, وَيَعْسْ أَدْنَاي et هَدَّبَار هَزَّي من محراث ويموت كل مقني مصرين ومن مقني بني إسرائيل لو ميت أحد. And so Adonai did this thing on the following morning, and all the livestock of the Egyptians died. However, nothing died, not one thing died of the livestock of the Israelites. Okay. Verse 7, וישלח פרעה והנה לא מת ממחנה ישראל עד אחד ויכבד לב פרעה ולא שלח את העם. And so now Pharaoh, who obviously isn't in the land of Goshen, he sees that every bit of the Egyptian livestock died, and so he sends. Pharaoh sent, and behold, nothing of the livestock or not one thing of the livestock of the Israelites died. And so that also made the heart of Pharaoh heavy or hard, and so that he wouldn't let the people go. verse 8. ويومر أدونai إلى موشي وإلى أهرون كحول لكم ملو حفنيكم بيح كفشان أزرخو موشي هشميمة لعني Pharaoh. So Adonai says to Moses and to Aaron, take for yourselves Melo Hofnechem, which means the palm or the hollow part of your hand, fill it up with Piach Kivshan, which means the soot or the ash of the kiln. Okay. Uzrachu Moshe Hashamema, and let Moses throw it towards the heaven in before the eyes of Pharaoh. Verse 9. وحياة لأباق على كل أرض مصرين وحياة على الحاذام وعلى حبهما لشحين بوريخ ذع بؤوف بكل أرض مصرين. And it shall be, or the soot, this abach, okay, shall become upon the land of Egypt and upon all humans and as well as beasts. L'shechin poreach ava'bu'oth. Shechin is basically like an ulcer. It could be an ulcer. It could be like an inflamed blister, but it actually uses blister here. In the next part, this is the Ba'bu'a. Of course, it's in the plural, and it shall be an outbreak of blisters in all the land of Egypt. Now, I think they call these boils, if I remember right. Verse 10. ويدحو את פي הכבשן ويعمدوا לפני פרעה ויזרוק אותו משה השמימה ויהי שחין אבע בועוף פורח באדם ובבהמה. And so they took the soot of the kiln and they stood before Pharaoh, and Moses threw it into the heavens, and it became an ulcer of blisters. Okay, and it became an outbreak against both man and the beast. So even the animals had to deal with that. Verse 11. ולא יכלו החרטומים לעמוד לפני משה מפני השכין כי היה השכין בחרטומים ובכל מצרים. And so the magicians were not able to stand before Moses or before because of the ulcers, because the ulcers because the ulcers were also on the magicians as well as all Egypt. Verse 12. So they went from being able to do the same thing that Moses and Aaron did to not being able to do it, and then also to being not only not being able to do it, but to be covered with these ulcers. Verse 12. وحزق Adonai et lev Para'o ולא שמע עליהם כאשר דיבר Adonai il Moshe. And so Adonai hardened the heart of Pharaoh. Now, here we have it again where it says Adonai hardened the heart of Pharaoh. That he didn't listen to him as Adonai spoke to Moses. Verse 13. ויאמר אדוני למשה, השכם בבוקר, והתייצב לפני פרעה, ואמרת אליו, כה אמר אדוני אלוהי העברים, שלח את עמי ויעבדוני. And so Adonai spoke to Moses, rise up early, get up early in the morning, and set yourself before Pharaoh, and you shall say to him, thus says Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, send my people that they may serve me. Verse 14, Ki b'pa'am hazot ani sholech et kol מגפותי אל לבך ובעבדיך ובעמך בעבור תדע כי אין כמוני בכל הארץ. Because this one time I'm sending all of my plagues. This is Maggefothai. This is from Magefa, and this is actually from Nagaf, which means to strike. All of my strikings into your heart and against, or to your heart, and against your servants and against your people. Ba'avur. Now we have another one. This is as a consequence of which you will know that there is none like me in all the land. Verse 15. Ki ata shalachti et yadi wa ak othecha wa et ammecha bedaver wa techahid min haaretz. For now, I will send out my hand, or I will dispatch my hand, or you can even say my power. Yeah, indicates your strength and power or ability to do something. And I will strike you and your people with a pestilence, or with the pestilence, and you will be effaced from the earth, which means you'll be destroyed and completely wiped off the face of the earth. Verse 16. وأولام بعبور زوج هعمدتيخ بعبور هرأوتخ et قحي ودماء سبر شمي بكل هارس. And this is the reason why, right here. This is why all of this is being done. So indeed, because of this, I will set you up, or I will make it so that you will remain, in order that you will be shown my strength, or I will set this up. Which means you. So, I will set you up so that you will see, or to show you my strength, so that my name will be related to Saper, which literally means to be counted or related in all the land. So that's the point of this last great pestilence or plague that will be sent throughout the land, so that everyone in the land will be talking about the name of Adonai. And that is the end of the 6th Aliyah. So now we're actually starting on the 7th Aliyah. That'll be in verse 17. And we only have until verse 34. And we're done with this parasha. This will be pretty cool. We actually have about a half hour. So normally we go 3 hours. So verse 17. Odecha mistolel bi'ami livilti shalham As long as you behave insolently or with exalt yourself against my people, so that you won't send them away. Verse 18. Hineni mamtir ka'et mahar barad kaved me'od asher lo haya chamuhu b'mitzrayim limin hayom hiwasida wa'ad ata. Behold, I will cause it to rain at this time tomorrow, very great stones of hail, or very great hail, which the likes of it never was in Egypt, even from the day it was founded. Hiwasada is the nif'al of yasod, which means to be, the yasod is the foundation of something. So hiwasada means that since the time that Egypt was even founded as a city until now. Wa'ad'ata, until now. Verse 19. Wa'ata shelach ha'ez et miknecha et mitnecha وَأَتْ كُلْ أَشَرْ لِخَا بَسَدَيْ كُلْ هَأَدَامْ وَحَبَّهِمَا أَشَرْ يِمَّتْسَيْ بَسَدَيْ وَلَوْ يَأَسَيْفْ هَبَّيْفَ وَيَرَادْ عَلَيْهِمْ هَبَّرَادْ وَمَيْثُوبْ. And so now, sin, ha'ez, this is interesting. This word ha'ez is from the root uz, which means to bring something in safety. This is a very rare verb that's used in the Tanakh, but it's used in Arabic a lot. In fact, there's a very interesting Islamic saying. It says "A'udhu billah," which means I seek refuge or I seek safety in God. And we see it sometimes used as ma'az in the Hebrew text, which means a place of refuge. Okay, here we have a question. I apologize. Which livestock is it referring to in verse 19? If all the livestock of the Egyptians were killed earlier, does this imply that Egyptians bought some of the livestock from the Israelites in the meantime? It could. That's an interesting question, because it said all the livestock of the Egyptians that was outside of Goshen died. Only the Israelites had livestock. Now it says that he sent to Goshen, which could indicate that the reason why he was sent there was now he had to beg the Israelites for food. I wanted to make that point when I read that, and I forgot about it, that all their livestock now is dead, so they'll probably be getting very hungry by not having meat. We remember that one of the complaints that Korah was saying was, hey, it would have been better if we just died in Egypt, where we had these big pots of meat and fish and all sorts of vegetables, and it was like a paradise, basically. Well, yeah, it's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up, because that could also be a means of why it made Pharaoh's heart heavy, why it made it so hard, is because now he had to go beg the Israelites, which, interesting, when you look at the story of Joseph, it was Goshen that was where the priests lived. They didn't have that 20% tax, that fifth that Joseph set upon all the other people. That was where the priests lived. That's where the Israelites ended up living, and all of the grain and the cattle was being sold into Goshen. So that was a very rich, wealthy area. Okay. And so now, send. Ha'ez et miknecha. So he's saying send, and bring your livestock into shelter, and all that you have in the field. every man, every beast that is found in the field and is not gathered into the house, the hail will come upon them and they will die. Okay. Verse 20. Hayare et devar Adonai me avade para'o haynis et avadav wa et miqnehu il habatim. Now this is an interesting verse here, and it's actually referenced in the Quran. I know I keep bringing that up, but I want to find that reference real quick so that anyone who is interested can actually look it up. So that will be in chapter 40, verse 28 of the Quran. Anybody who wants to look it up. But it talks about a person who, and that doesn't have the exact same similar instance, but it talks about someone who hid their faith but feared God, and basically was speaking to Pharaoh. And so here it says, the one that feared the word of God from among the servants of Pharaoh, he brought in his servants and his livestock into houses. Okay. However, the one, verse 21, وَأَشَرْ لَهُ ثَمْ لِبُّ الْدِبَارَ أَدَنَاءِ وَيَعْزُوبْ et عَبَدَاف وَet مِخْنَيْهُ بَسَّدَيْ. And however, the one who didn't consider it, he didn't set it to his mind, to his heart, the words of Adonai, but he left his servants and his livestock in the field. So you have this one person who basically feared the word of God, and he brought his stuff into the various houses. However, those who didn't set it, the words of God, to his heart, meaning they didn't consider it, then he left his servants and livestock in the field. Verse 22, وَيَوْمَرْ أَدْنَاي إِلَى مُوشَيْ نَتَيْأَتْ يَدْخَا عَلْى الشَّمَايِمْ وِحِي بَرَامْ لِكُلْ أَرَتْ مِصْرَيْمْ عَلْى أَدَمْ وَعَلْى بَهِمَا وَعَلْى كُلْ عِيسِف حَسَدَيْ بِأَرَتْ مِصْرَيْمْ. And so Adonai spoke to Moses, stretch out your hand towards the heavens, that hail will be in all the land of Egypt, upon man and upon beast, and upon all the grass of the field in the land of Egypt. 23. وَيَيْتْ مُوشَيْ et مَتَّيْهُ عَلْى الشَّمَايِمْ وَأَدْنَاي نَثَانَ قَلَوْث وَبَرَاث وَتِحَلَخ إِيش أَرْتَاهُ وَيَمْتِرْ أَدْنَاي بَرَاث عَلْى أَرْتْ مِصْرَيْمْ. And so Moses stretched out his staff against the heavens, and Adonai, he gave cholot. Now this literally means voices, but it's talking about thunders. So thunders began to happen, and hail and fire came down towards the earth, and so God rained hail upon the earth, or upon the land of Egypt. So now you not only had hail, but you also had fire. Verse 24, وَيَحِي بَرَاث وَإِيش مِتْلَقَّحَاث بِثُوقْ حَبَّرَاث خَبِيد مِئُوب أَشَرْ لَوْ حَيَا خَمْؤُهُ بِقُولْ أَرَتْ مِصْرَيْمْ مَيْأَاز حَيَاثَ لَغْوَيْ. And so the hail, there was hail and fire. Now it says mit laqahat bituq, which means it was moving around amongst the hail. So you had the hail, and then you had this fire also moving around, or taking a part in the midst of the of the hail. And so it was very great, so that there was nothing like it in all the land of Egypt, even from the time that it became a nation. Leroy. Verse 25, وَيَقْ برا دخول أرس مصرعين إذ كل أشهر بالسداء مئدام وعد بهما وإذ كل عيسف حسداء هكا حبرا وإذ كل عيد حسداء شبير. And so the hail struck all the land of Egypt and all that was in the field, from man to beast, as well as the grass of the field. Hikka Habarav, the hail struck. Also, every tree of the field was broken. Now, eight doesn't necessarily have to mean tree. It can mean shrub. It can mean anything of that nature. We also know that we'll read here in just a minute that the barley would have been destroyed, but not the wheat. Verse 26. Rach be'eretz Goshen, asher sham b'nei Yisrael lo haya barat. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, there was no hail. So now, just like you mentioned earlier, the livestock of Egypt was killed. Only the livestock in Goshen remained for the Israelites. Now we have another situation. All of the produce of the field now is destroyed. Only in the land of Goshen do they have crops. Okay, it was broken because of the hail, burned up. And later we'll see that the locusts come and eats up even what remains of that. Verse 27. ويشلح فارعو ويقرأ لموسى ولأهرون ويؤمر إليهم حتى في הפעם أدونai الصديق وأني وعمي הרשעים. And so Pharaoh sent, and he called for Moses and Aaron, and he says to them, Chatati, I have sinned, hapa'am, this time. Adonai is righteous. However, me and my people, we are the transgressors, the Rishaim, the people who violated that which was right. Verse 28, He'tiru il Adonai, Borav, Mihyot Kolot Elohim Uvarad, Wa'ashalha Etlechem Walo Thosifun Li'amod. Intercede to God, or entreat Adonai. It is enough. Warav Mihyot Kolot Elohim Uvarad. The voices of God, talking about the thunder now of God and the hail, it's enough. Okay? And I will send you, and you will not, you will no longer remain. Okay, verse 29. ويومر إلى موسى كسيتي et ha'ir ifrosh et kapai il Adonai haqoloth yehedelun وحبرات lo يحيعوذ למען תדעת כי לאדוני haaretz. And so Moses said to him, as I am leaving out of the city, I will spread out my hands to Adonai, and the thunders, these voices, okay, they shall leave off, and the hail will no longer be, so that you may know that the land belongs to Adonai, the earth belongs to Adonai. Verse 30, وَأَتَى وَعَبَدَيْخَ يَدَعَتِي كِتَرَمْ تِرَؤُونَ مِپَنَي Adonai Elohim. And as for you and your servants, I know that before ki terem tireun, before you will fear from the presence of Adonai Elohim. 31. وحبشت وحسعرا نكاثا كي حسعرا أviv وحبشت giva'ol. The 31, and the pishta, the word pishta means flax. This is your flax, and the barley was struck from the hailstones because the barley was aviv. This is why we searched for the aviv barley to begin our years, which is what we'll find out about in chapter 12, next week's parasha. And so the barley was in aviv. This is a certain state of ripeness, and the flax was giv'ol, which means the flax was already flowering. Okay. 32. Wahahita wahakusefet lo nuku ki apilot heina. But the wheat and the spelt, they were not struck because they were late. Apilot, they were late, which means they hadn't yet come up. It could either mean that they hadn't yet come out or breached the ground, or it could have been so young that they were flexible enough that the hail didn't bother them, didn't strike it. Verse 33. Oh, I have another question. I think. Nope, same one. All right. Verse 33. وَيَيْتِ مُوشَى مَعِنْ پَرْعَوْ et ha'ir وَيِفْرُشْ كَپَّاv il Adonai وَيَهْدِلُ هَقَلوth وَحَبَرَات وَمَطَار lo نُتَخ أَرْضَ. And so Moses went out from Pharaoh, also the city, and he spread his hands to Adonai, and so the thunders and the hail ceased, and the rain no longer poured towards the earth. 34. وَيَار پَرْعَوْ كِي حَذَر حَمَطَار وَحَبَرَات وَحَقْلوث وَيُوسف لِحَتُوه وَيَخْبَيْتْ بْلِبَّهُ هُوَ وَعَبَدَار. So Pharaoh saw that the rain, the hail, and the thunder ceased, and he continued to sin. وَيُوسف لِحَتُوه. He could continue to sin, and so he hardened his heart as well as his servants. 35. ويحزق لپرعو ולא שלח את בני ישראל כאשר דיבר אדוני ביד משה. And so the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not send out the children of Israel as Adonai spoke by the hand of Moses. And that, my friends, is the end of this parasha. All right, so wow, 5 minutes left. This is not normal. I think about 3 hours for a parasha reading is enough. I would like to thank everyone for coming and being a part. I appreciate all the great questions that were posted and asked. And You are very welcome. I tell you, this is one of the highlights of my week, to come and be here with you guys, and hold to read, just to be able to have people to read the Torah with and engage with. And I probably forgot to put the link in the comment section, but the link to the studio should be on Facebook as well as in the YouTube channel. So anytime any of you want to come on and read the Torah with us, just click the link to the Streamyard studio, and you can come right on and read along with us, and interact with us live. You don't have to be nervous about it. I don't expect everyone who comes on here to know Hebrew or to be able to read Hebrew. You can read it in whatever translation you have. We had a few weeks ago, one of our viewers came on. He comes on a lot, and he actually read it in German, which was pretty good. So I don't care about the translation. If you want to participate, come on. This isn't the Yaakov and Yisrael show. This is the World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study, and study is better when more people are involved. So, anyways, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming. I hope to see everyone next Shabbat. If you have any questions, post the questions in Facebook or on YouTube. I think everyone that I see here has my WhatsApp or Telegram number, so you can post them in WhatsApp, Telegram. I am now on Signal, also in what is that other one there? I'll tell you, this is Discord is the name of that one. So wherever you can find me, if you have questions, post those questions. I love them, and we'll discuss them. I may not always be right. Most of the times I may not even know. And it's good. That's why I appreciate questions, because sometimes I don't know that I don't know something until someone asks the questions. So it's great. I love those questions. Keep them coming. So I want to wish everyone Shabbat Shalom who is here and still in Shabbat, and a Shavua Tov to everyone who is now, like myself, in the first of the week. And I will see you same time, same channel next Shabbat. So Shavua Tov.